Hello and welcome back to the third episode of. So we do have kind of some names. My fellow YouTuber Luke G's field review came up with some. What do you think about On the Sideline with Kyle and Jackson?
I like that one. That's a good name. I'm a fan of that one.
Okay, so with that, thank you to Luke G's field review for the name. And so we have a fun show. We're going to get into Cam Newton leaving the Panthers. We're going to get into the Slay versus Matt Patricia stuff that went on. We're going to have a draft we're going to rank 10 total moves this offseason, 5 each. So should be a lot of fun stuff to get into. But Kyle, let's just start things off with top story at this hour. Cam Newton, first overall pick from several years ago, for the first time in almost a decade, will not be a Carolina Panther. What are your initial thoughts on this?
To me, this is a clear statement of intent for the Carolina Panthers. I think it's a smart move on their part. You know, if Cam Newton's not going to play, then it's time to move on. Obviously, they tried to trade him. The one thing I would suggest that I kind of hate what a lot of GMs do is they let it be known that, like, months in advance that they don't want the guy. And so his trade value pretty much went to non-existent because of the whole thing. But, you know, at the end of the day, you are getting virtually the same value from Kyle Allen and Cam Newton last year based on Newton's health. And Cam Newton was $21 million, and they didn't view Kyle Allen as good enough. So if you're not viewing Kyle Allen as good enough to be the starter, then clearly Cam Newton's not good enough to be the guy anymore in your book. So it's a smart move to move on, and Cam is going to get another opportunity to play. It just depends on where he lands is the next question.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, for one thing, it's interesting to see if he's going to get an opportunity to start, because as of right now, it's looking like he might have to take a backup role with, a lot of the starting jobs are filled. We'll have to see. But I do find it interesting because I think it comes down to how healthy was he when he was playing last season. He played 2 games and he was terrible. He was not good. But at the same time, the dilemma is this just who Cam Newton is now? Did the injuries just finally take its toll? Or was he actually just playing injured? And does he still have a lot left in the tank? It's hard to say. He's been in the league for 9 years, which is a lot for a running back. It isn't a lot for a quarterback. He's always kind of been in the middle of both of those two things. So part of me does wonder if he does have more in the tank. It is worth mentioning that he passed a physical by the Carolina Panthers. It was coordinated by the Panthers. He passed it. His foot and shoulder are fine now. But again, it comes down to how much does he have in the tank. I do find there to be very interesting things that happened when we're talking about the way the Panthers decided to move on from Cam. I thought that it was very unceremonious the way that they sort of just said Cam Newton's not on our team now. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave Jameis Winston a better send off than the Carolina gave Cam Newton, the guy who took them to a Super Bowl. I mean, I'm just going to read some of these stats right here. He was the number 1 overall pick. He has 29,000 passing yards, which is the most in franchise history. 182 passing touchdowns, the most in franchise history. He has 58 rushing touchdowns, which is the most in franchise history. He went to a Super Bowl, won an MVP, and has been for the Panthers for 9 of their 25 total seasons, which is 35% of the time that they've been a team. It just seems crazy for really the Carolina Panther to kind of just go off like that.
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of see it is it might be a little tone deaf. This is not the owner, GM, or coach who drafted him originally back in, 2009? I think he was the number 1 overall pick. And no, not that long. But anyway.
Yeah, 11 maybe, around there. He played for 9 seasons, so.
Yeah. So, it may be a little tone deaf on their part that it's all new faces who haven't been around Cam Newton, because obviously he's the greatest Panther probably of all time besides Steve Smith. And that's even up for debate of who's the greatest of all time. And it's just at this point, you saw what he had to offer last year for the team. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen with his health and if he's going to be able to, because he took a lot of hits. And that was his game, always taking hits. He was the goal line back, essentially, along with playing quarterback. And taking those kind of hits, I don't know if his shoulder is going to be recoverable at this point. I do like a lot of what the Panthers have done offseason wise. Like, I think this receiving core is actually going to be really good. With Robbie Anderson's going to be their number 3 guy. Christian McCaffrey goes with Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. Like, that's going to be a pretty good team. And unfortunately, it is a casualty. You would have liked to seen a little bit more, done for him as, his legendary status as a Panther.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the notable thing was just the Instagram post. I believe it's Instagram, might have been Twitter. I'm not really on social media much, but where it probably one of the funniest, like unintentional comedy moments is just him responding angrily to the Panthers social media team, but him using the font of like all weird Cam Newton letters. It's very amusing, but I do find again, it's just one of those crazy things where now in the NFC South, the four quarterbacks are Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, and Teddy Bridgewater. So I think for a Panthers fan, I've been looking a lot on the Panthers Reddit. It seems like they are very disappointed just in the way things are going. Not even necessarily to say it's the wrong decision, but it's just one of those. It's going to be a wake up call because Cam Newton, I do feel like, is underrated. As a Buccaneers fan, I kind of am legally required to dislike him, but at the same time, I always felt like he didn't get enough credit. I mean, Cam Newton in his prime was unstoppable, and there's nothing more frustrating than a great running quarterback where you just can never seem to tackle them. It seems so difficult to stop them. Every third down and 3, they find a way to get 4 yards. And I do think that, if this is, if Cam Newton is done and he never really gets another shot again, I do think that he definitely has left his mark in NFL history.
Oh yeah, no doubt. 2015 MVP. He was fantastic that season. It's just a shame. I just don't know how much his body's going to hold up, and how much do you want to invest a guy who you're not really sure how that's going to hold up over this time.
Yeah. What do you think about Cam Newton going to the Patriots? I mean, that's a theory that's been brought up a little bit.
I keep hearing this, and I wouldn't mind him coming in and like competing for the job at all. Obviously, I say all this stuff about his health, but if he's competing against Jared Stidham, I'm more than happy to have Cam Newton be the starting quarterback for at least a season or whatever. But we don't have the cap space. He's not going to come in here.
Right.
We can rework some deals to like open up a little bit of cap space. But you really think Cam Newton's going to take a $2 million 1-year prove-it deal? Like, there's just no way. That's not the going rate for a quarterback in my mind. He's not going to take a $2 million deal.
Well, it depends on what his other options are. I mean, if his other option is to get a $4 million deal somewhere else, or if it's a $6 million deal, he might take a pay cut to play for a great team and have a chance to prove that he's still got it. Sort of the Teddy Bridgewater model of I'm going to be a backup for a great team and sort of prove that I can be great here instead of being a starter for a terrible team where it will be my last opportunity. Not exactly the same. Yeah, I don't really see it happening either. Part of me thinks that the Chargers make sense, but they're seemingly very confident in Taylor. So I don't really know where he's going to go, but it should be a very interesting thing to watch for the rest of this offseason.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. It'll be interesting to see. I think he, there are a lot of teams that I think he can compete for a starting job with cap space. I was going to get into this a little bit with Jameis Winston also, but essentially, if he wants to compete for a job, right now, I have over the cap up right here, so I'll have this. The Redskins have $33 million in cap space. The Dolphins have $25 million in cap space. The Chargers have $23 million in cap space. The Bills have $22 million in cap space. The Jaguars have $20 million in cap space. You can go down the line of all these teams and say these are all teams that, you may not say that he's going to be the shoe-in starter. Even the Broncos have $21 million in cap space. You may like the guy that's there, but why wouldn't you bring in a guy and say, hey, compete? If you can't beat an unhealthy Cam Newton for a starting job, then you're not an NFL quarterback. If you're a Drew Lock, if you're a Josh Allen, this is the same thing I feel about Winston. If you can't beat this guy, who's kind of the benchmark for, Cam Newton unhealthy or Jameis, I would say is the benchmark for an average quarterback in the NFL. If you can't beat that guy, then you don't deserve to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I think there's a lot of these teams that can come in and give him, a $15 million prove-it deal and say, hey, you're going to compete for this job. If you win it, you win it. If you don't, we'll figure something else out or you'll back up.
I think there's some logic there. I think where I would a bit disagree on is something like, I think the Washington Redskins, for example, I don't think that Dwayne Haskins is better than Winston. I don't know how healthy Cam Newton is.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think Cam or Josh Allen are. But I'm just saying that if they wanted to if they still feel confident in those guys, at least giving him a chance, you might as well
Mhm.
bring someone in to compete with them, even a Drew Lock at that point.
Yeah, no, I get the idea if you're going to say you're going to, quote unquote compete, but the reality is we're never going to make you a starter. But if you're going to bring in Jameis Winston and say whoever, plays better, Haskins or Winston, you guys, you're the starter, Winston is going to end up being the starter, and you might as well just get rid of Haskins now. Because I think that the real move is to try to build him up, try to see if you can reach his full potential, or just move on from him altogether. It's up to you. But I think that there's some things I think it makes sense for, but only if you're kind of doing unless you really like for Cam Newton, for example, if you're a Redskins, unless Cam Newton reaches his MVP form, which I guess maybe there is some logic there. I just think that if Cam Newton is unhealthy, even if he's playing slightly better than Haskins, I think you would play Haskins or Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, there's potential for that, but at the same time, like, I don't necessarily agree with that with like the Bills, because like, are the Bills really that far off from being like a potential contender in the AFC? Like, you got to put
Mm-hmm.
them as the favorite at this point to win the AFC East, even with
Right.
New England's been the staple there. But at this point,
Mm-hmm.
you got to put Buffalo as the favorite with the 11-5 season, all the positive momentum. They're bringing in a number one receiver. If you're saying that this is our window, this is our chance to compete for a Super Bowl, then this kind of if you have a guy that can get you there more likely than Josh Allen, then I think you should go take that guy. Go get that guy.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I think that it's very different between a team like Washington, who is rebuilding, and a team like Buffalo, who is trying to compete. And I mean, the idea is for them to win a Super Bowl this year. That's probably what they're saying. So I do think there is actually some real differences there. I would expect it actually does make some sense for Buffalo to go out and do that. Now, I think you're right about that. And so let's just go into Jameis Winston since we brought him up. It's interesting because he's not on a team. I was kind of holding out hope that perhaps he was going to stay with Tampa Bay to be a backup. It seems like that's not going to be the case. He's taken every Buccaneers thing off social media. The Buccaneers social media team on Twitter tweeted out that, thank you, number 3, for everything you've done. And I think it's a weird thing for non-Tampa Bay fans to be like, thank you for what? You gave a first overall pick on him. He was supposed to be Andrew Luck. He ended up essentially being a bust. He threw 30 interceptions last season. But there is that weird thing about Winston where even though he had so many off-the-field issues, on the field, he was so likable. He was the guy that was always giving 100% every play. And in a game where typically quarterbacks don't do that, especially quarterbacks on bad teams, it was so much fun to watch. And he did kind of embody hope in a lot of ways because I said before Jameis Winston got here, there were plenty of games where we're like, we're never winning this game. Once he got there, we always had a chance to win every game. Now, we always had a chance to lose every game too, but we always had a chance to win every game. And so I just think it's such an interesting dynamic. And I do think that he can be successful with another team.
Yeah, I definitely think he could be successful with another team. I think one of the things that you've seen with some of these quarterbacks at free agency point, where they're kind of at the fork in the road in their career, is there's really three options you can take. You can either jump to the next starting job, you like that competing route, like we talked about with some of these teams, or the third option is you go be a backup behind an offensive mastermind. You might get an opportunity to start based on an injury, or you earn the playing time, and then you look really good and you get a huge contract off of it. So I think the Chargers, I like a lot of what they've done in free agency, but I don't really understand. Like, this team is really good. Like, they're going to have the
Mm-hmm.
best cornerback duo in the league. They got Bosa and Ingram. They got a pretty good offensive line now off their free agent moves. They got two good wide receivers. Austin Eckler has proven to be serviceable. They have a good safety back there in a great safety back there in Derwin James. This team is really good. Like, you can't honestly tell me that Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert is going to start for this team and hopefully compete for a playoff spot against the Chiefs. So I think the Chargers make a lot of sense for a starter. It just depends on if they want to make Jameis the guy. We talked a little bit about the Bills, Redskins, Broncos. If you feel like you can get a guy who can compete, Winston might be that option for a lot of those teams. And then the dark horse I have that they have about $14 million in cap space, I saw. And he gets the chance or learn behind an offensive guru who gets a chance to develop is the Los Angeles Rams, who is someone I actually kind of tapped for Winston earlier in free agency. And I feel like it makes a lot of sense to be the backup behind Goff. There's already been questions about whether Goff is actually the guy. He learns from McVay, and he might get a chance to play and prove his number one pick worth.
Yeah, that's actually an very interesting idea. I believe that would give the Rams 2 number 1 overall picks and a number 3 overall pick with Blake Bortles also there. So quite the draft class of quarterbacks. But that's a very interesting thing. I think what I would be worried about if I'm the Rams is they just don't have a ton of cap space. I know they have enough cap space where they could get him, but I think they'd rather use that on depth because as we've seen, one injury and their entire team fell apart with the Todd Gurley injury, and then of course offensive line getting older didn't help anything. But I just think that they'd probably rather use it in other places than use it on a backup quarterback, especially with Bortles, who is still a solid quarterback.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I almost feel like the Rams might have missed their window. Like, there's a lot of people who, this team just didn't seem like it was at the level that it was ever going to be again. And McVay might have been spooked a little bit in that Super Bowl and how badly he got outcoached. And this team just felt like it had it didn't have the same, there was a lot of spark to the team the year before when they made the run of the Super Bowl that just didn't really seem there last season. And I'm curious if this team might have missed its window. Obviously, getting depth and getting healthier is more important, but we'll see what happens with this team.
Yeah, that's not you're not alone in that take, but I've kind of been the opposite. I think that the Rams are fine. I think that at the end of the day, they still have a great coach. They still have, in my opinion, a very good quarterback, even though he didn't have the best season last year. He does need a good offensive line to play well, as we've seen, but he's still very good. I still like their receiving core. They have Aaron Donald. So this is a team that I think is going to be fine. At the end of the day, what's most important is having a coach and having a quarterback. I feel kind of similar to there was a season, I believe it was 2 years back, maybe 3 years back, when the Seahawks missed the playoffs. That was 3 years ago. Seattle missed the postseason, and everyone was talking about Seattle is done. They got rid of Richard Sherman in the offseason, and they went 9-7 the year before. It was looking like they were going to be terrible. They made the playoffs the next 2 seasons and even won a playoff game last year. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to trust talented people, and I trust Sean McVay. I think the Rams will be okay. Again, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent here with the Rams, but that's my thought on them. Another team that I keep hearing getting talked about is the Pittsburgh Steelers. What do you think about that for Winston?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. He learns out of a guy that's kind of, very similar to him in the way they both play. They're both bigger guys that kind of, are difficult to sack because of their size and their way to, shift around the pocket. They're kind of mobile in a sense of they avoid some sacks in that kind of regard. And they both have big arms and, possess a vertical passing game that they both played with under Bruce Arians. So it makes sense for the two of them and what they, he gets a chance to learn under Ben Roethlisberger and potentially take over that role. I just don't know if Pittsburgh makes that move if they want to bring a guy in like Winston. It seemed like they made a really concerted effort with guys like Bell and Antonio Brown that, we don't really want any locker room problems in this team anymore. And, Winston, it seems like by a lot of accounts is a good guy, still has a lot of baggage behind him also.
Yeah, that's true. In terms of locker room, I think all of his team, there's never been a bad thing said about him in terms of the locker room, but the off the field stuff, there are going to be some teams that just don't want him because of that. One of the teams that we know will not be that will be the New England Patriots. Again, this is something that has to be brought up. It gets talked about. What about Winston saying, you know what? I'm going to take $1 million. I'm going to go to the best franchise in football over the past 2 decades. I'm going to prove I can play on a 1-year deal. And then next year I'm going to get a big contract. Bet on himself. Does this make any sense?
Well,
it would be fun.
It would be interesting for sure. I think the problem is that, the one thing Belichick's always preached, if there's one part of the Patriot way that has always been preached, is that you get turnovers and don't turn over the ball. You don't commit penalties, you don't beat yourself. And Jameis Winston is the definition of beating yourself. all the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
just don't see – I see him throwing 10 interceptions in a season and, like, Bill Belichick just taking a bench and hitting him over the head with it or something. I just – I don't see that I don't see that pairing really working very well
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, like, personality. I will say I think that the Patriots are going to get really creative this offseason. You know, I've heard a lot of stuff. You know, Belichick actually raves about, like, the old wing T offenses and the old, like, spread options that are running college football now. I think he's going to get really creative with what they do, and that might mean bringing in a mobile quarterback rather than, you know, your traditional guy. It's going to be interesting to see the Patriots this offseason. I don't think Jameis Winston's going to be that guy for New England.
Yeah, probably not. I hope it happens. It would just be the most fun thing. It would be the most fun season ever of every game. Bill Belichick just pulling his hair out, trying to figure out what's going on in Winston's mind. But yeah, probably not. And speaking of a head coach and a player not getting along too well, let's transition to another head coach under the Bill Belichick tree. The Darius Slay versus Matt Patricia beef that has gone on. It's one of the weirdest things I think that's happened in terms of just a public dispute between a coach and a player. Slay has been very outspoken about not liking Patricia, and Luke G, who I will bring up for the second time in this video, has he had a good point on his show where he said, "Why does Matt Patricia get the benefit of the doubt? For everyone who is taking Patricia's side on this, what has Matt Patricia ever done to earn that benefit of the doubt and to earn the idea that Darius Slay is the one who's just overreacting?"
Well, I mean, my comment is Patricia should never get the benefit of the doubt in my mind. I mean, listen, I'll be honest, I was jumping for joy when I found out he went to Detroit to be a head coach. And that was mainly because he didn't blitz Nick Foles one time in a Super Bowl where Nick Foles had 4 starts in a row, and that was it for the whole season. He didn't blitz him once, and I was really mad about that, but that's besides the point. So
not entirely besides the point, actually. I mean,
well, yeah,
the part of is the point, yeah.
We lose him and Trey Flowers, and then our defense magically gets better 2 years in a row. You know, Brian Flores was a lot better of a defensive coordinator. Patricia has been a dumpster fire since he got there. I mean, there's nothing around that. And you look at this Detroit Lions saga over the last, 10, 12 years, they had that 0-16 season. Jim Schwartz comes in. He has a little bit of a hard nose. He gets it back on track because they were a little too loose. I actually really like Caldwell, and it seems like, everywhere Jim Caldwell goes, it seems like the players really like him because he's kind of the laid-back guy. And then they go ahead and, after some solid seasons for Detroit's perspective, they go ahead and flip around and get the most hard-nosed guy they can find and think that's going to change everything. And it's no surprise that the guys don't like him. And then he goes and trades the best safety on it. This team had an elite secondary with Quandre Diggs and Darius Slay. And then they go and trade the best safety on the team. And his style doesn't really seem to get along with the players. And, that's where we're at now. It's like, what do we do at this point?
Yeah, and honestly, like I tend to not try to make too many takes like this. I tend to just try to look at the X's and O's. But there is a part of me that just feels like, how can you respect a guy like Matt Patricia who says some of these things? I mean, he had the stop sucking his you-know-what comment about Odell Beckham Jr. and Darius Slay. Slay said that Matt Patricia told him he had no business working out with guys like Richard Sherman and Aqib Talib because those guys were elite and Slay was just good. I think that those are the kind of comments where it's like he doesn't understand his player, and he doesn't understand that that's not going to motivate Slay. That's just going to piss Slay off. Whereas if, some guys, I'm sure Bill Belichick probably did that to somebody, and that's where Patricia learned it from and said, oh, okay, that's a great way to motivate someone. But you have to know your people, and you're going to have a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. And, if you want to make a public example out of someone like Slay, you probably should at least pull him aside afterwards and just be like, hey, just so you know, I know you're a really good player, but I want to make sure no one's above the team. Have a conversation with him, make sure that kind of thing is okay. It seems like he isn't a great people person, and that's honestly a huge deal in a head coach.
You also have to know who you are. If Belichick makes a comment like that, it's one thing. If Matt Patricia makes a comment, it's a completely other thing. it's, Bill Belichick has the right to say what he wants because he's proven that his method of madness works. Matt Patricia hasn't proven anything. And, going into a building and getting under everybody's skin, imagine working at a workplace where a guy just comes in and says, "Hey, fuck," as he walks through the door his first day. You're just going to be like, "All right, get over this guy." And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to get along with a guy like that, especially when he's coming into your work environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of like I've worked at Subway. If I was all of a sudden got on the board of Jimmy John's, I'm not going to start bossing people around and be like, look at what I did to Subway. I just worked there. Like, I think that's what a lot of these people feel about Matt Patricia. And also, there's just something about him taking a golf cart to and from the locker room that I just feel like again, it's like, how can you respect that kind of thing? Like, just at least walk through the locker room.
He's definitely making this guy do 100-yard wind sprints, and then he's going to take the golf cart down to the other side to blow the whistle.
Right. It's yeah.
Geez.
And it should be mentioned there are some people that like Patricia. Deron Harmon, when he came there, maybe he's just paying lip service, but he did say Matty P is such a passionate, great coach who has a lot of fire. As a player like myself, I play that way, so I need somebody to do that. If I don't get that fire burning, get that fire burning for me. So there are some people, again, maybe he's just saying it. I don't know. But there definitely have been people that like Patricia, which to me kind of leads me to, I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's probably just socially awkward and doesn't really know how to handle these situations and maybe thinks he's being funny when he's doing some of these things, thinks he's being smart, and it's just he doesn't realize the situation.
It's a tough thing to it's also like you can be a certain way when you're working within the institution, but trying to be the institution and making that sort of your way is very difficult to implement in a different area. If you go to Harvard and you have a hard-nosed professor, you kind of tolerate it because it's like, I'm getting the Harvard education. That's what I do. But if that guy leaves and tries to open his own university and he's hard-nosed to all 20 of his students, none of those students want to be there. So they're just going to pack up and go, And the Patriots would be Harvard in this situation, obviously. So,
right? No, I got it. Yeah, understood. I think, but yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's crazy to me that he's still on the team. Quite frankly, like I don't get what they're doing keeping him. Makes zero sense to me. But I guess that's the way they want to go. Do you have anything else about Matt Patricia and the Slay drama?
I guess if you're looking to make some money, that's a pretty good bet for first coach fired.
Yeah.
If that's the route you want to go, I think he's a pretty good option. So,
right. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're gonna have a draft here. This should be fun. It's a little way to talk about some of the bigger off-season moves that we touched on last podcast, and also bring up some of the ones that have happened this past week. We're each gonna select 5 of the best moves of the off-season. We're gonna trade back and forth, and we'll just see which one does the better one. I think it's only fair. I gave you the first pick last time. If I get the first pick this time, does that seem reasonable?
Yes, go for it. I think I know where you're going, number 1.
Yeah, kind of an obvious one, I think. Well, there was 2 that I think were good, but I think the DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to Arizona, again, it's the move that confused everybody of how dumb of a decision it was. And so you have to give credit to Arizona for pulling it off on the other end. You get a star wide receiver. It's just kind of a no-brainer decision.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. Obviously, we talked a lot about that in the last podcast. And, Hopkins is going to be a great option there. That's going to be a dangerous receiving core. That's going to be a dangerous offense going forward. I'm excited to see what Kingsbury can do with all that talent.
Yeah, me as well. We don't have to spend too long on there. Go ahead with your number 2 overall pick.
Well, it pains me to say it, but of course I'm going to go with the legend Tom Brady on number 2. I think this is a smart move. $25 million a year for possibly one of the best or the best quarterback ever, and he's going to go on to a team that has a lot of talent around him. And if they can add a tackle in the draft, then this team's going to be dangerous going forward. This is a Super Bowl contender. This is the kind of move you make if you're ready to win a Super Bowl, and this was a smart move.
Yeah, no. Again, we're going to be on the same page here with the first two. They were the obvious first two to choose because they're probably the two biggest ones. I think it was a real, Joe Burrow, Chase Young situation, and I think the draft is going to get interesting once we get to the number 3 pick. And again, just to reiterate the way it works is this is just from one side's perspective. So if it is a trade, for example, it could be, potentially both teams could end up on the draft. If both, I don't think that'll happen, but if both teams benefited from a certain trade, it could happen. But anyways, my number 3 overall pick, I'm going Jack Conklin to the Cleveland Browns, right tackle. It's just a perfect fit for them. They needed a tackle. They get a 25-year-old really good right tackle who can run block, so it'll really help out the running game with Nick Chubb. Not that he needs that much help. He's already very good. This should help Baker Mayfield. And I think the Cleveland Browns have done a lot of good moves this offseason, but this one is by far number 1 on the list, in my opinion.
That's a good one. I'm also going offensive tackle with my pick. And I mentioned this team earlier about how I like a lot of what they've done. If they can stay healthy, I think they're a contender in the AFC. I'm going Brian Bulaga and Trey Turner to LA. It's kind of 2 moves. I'll go with Brian Bulaga. I think that's a really smart move. You're getting the guy who pretty much protected Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks in football all these years, and you're getting him at $10 million a year. I think this is just smart business. This is a smart move. You've needed a tackle for how long? Russell Okung can stay healthy. So this is the move you go, and, there's a lot of moves now the Chargers can make off of this. We mentioned if they bring in a veteran quarterback like a Cam Newton, a Jameis Winston, then instead of getting a Justin Herbert, bless you, if they bring in a Cam Newton or a Jameis Winston rather than drafting a Justin Herbert, then they can get like a Mekhi Becton, who's one of my favorite prospects in the draft, and all of a sudden you got probably the most talented offensive line in football to go along with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and a really stacked defense. There's a lot of moves now that the Chargers can make off this. This is a smart move, though.
Yeah, another one very high on my list. It's a great move. I'll go ahead and move on to the 5th overall pick now. This is Jabril Casey. I just think that him going to Denver, it's just one of those, like, you're getting him for basically nothing. And I think that their defensive line is already so good, can make it even better.
Yeah, I mean, that was an absolute steal for Denver to be able to get him. Mm-hmm. What was it, for a 5th round pick, I think? And that was a smart move. I have to do, but I'm going to wait on that one. I'm going to go with the double linebacker tandem that the Vegas Raiders got. And I really like, the Mayock, the GM for the Raiders, clearly said that linebacker was for this team last year. And he went out and got the best 2 in free agency. And I can't really fault that. Even if you're paying the money for it, Corey Littleton and Kwiatkowski, that's a smart. You're getting 2 tackling machines. Smart move for this team, and it's going to really beef up this defense going forward.
Yeah, no, I like those moves as well. I didn't realize we could take 2 moves as 1 move, but I guess we'll allow it. But yeah, I like both of those moves, and I do think that the best thing I like about it is just that they're not relying on Vontaze Burfict to stay out of trouble. So that's a great thing, I think. But we'll go ahead and move on to this. Yeah. So let's see. So that was you had the 5th pick. Wait, you had the 5th or 6th pick? You had the 5th because I went first. So. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, math is hard. Anyways, moving on to number 7. I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars getting rid of the Nick Foles contract. I think that they got a 4th round pick back from it, which it was kind of wondering, are they going to have to Brock Osweiler it? They did not. They were able to get value back. They get rid of the contract. They don't have to be spending $20+ million on someone who is going to be a backup quarterback, and they got value back along with it. So I think this is a great move from their perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this was didn't really hate it for either side. This Mitch Trubisky saga in Chicago has clearly been to the front office, and this is a good way for them to get out of it. I don't hate the move. And I also know, hey, from Jacksonville's perspective, you give Minshew a shot, you get cap space open to get other guys or make so smart move on both sides. With my 8th pick, I'm going to go with DJ Reader. I thought they paid a little bit of they paid a little bit of a price for a defensive tackle. But at the end of the day, you're getting probably tackle pairings in football now when you have DJ Reader and his run defense ability paired with Geno Atkins and his pass rush ability. This team was really bad in the run because of a lot of what Atkins was getting upfield, and now they have the ability to complement him with a really elite run stopping defender. So I like the move on that point.
Yeah, no, that's another one. I did not have that one on my list actually, but I did like that move, and I think that again, it's the when you're a terrible team, the one bright spot is usually you don't have that much money tied up in the cap, and you can get some free agents. So good free agent signing there. My number 7 pick is number 9 pick. Wait, I'm lost again.
Number 9, yes.
Number 9. That's what I thought. Okay. Got it. My last pick then. Final pick. It's Malcolm Jenkins going to the Saints. I think that this is a fantastic move by them. I think he'll fit that defense perfectly. He's kind of what they've needed a little bit with a smart safety that can really help out a lot of these other players. And also, again, with the Tom Brady coming to Tampa Bay, now he will be a great foil for him. He'll be a great foil for Matt Ryan and even Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, it just seems like he's going to be a perfect fit for the Saints, and he's also just a really good player.
Yeah, I like that move a lot. Jenkins, obviously, they shouldn't have let him go to begin with, but now you get him to make her. All right, so 10th pick. Oh, man. I have 3 written down here that I really like. I'm going to a lot about this when it happened. Obviously, the best move for Tennessee was that they didn't go crazy. And, it's actually harder than you think for a lot of these GMs not to go crazy when it comes to free agency. And now they essentially they keep the guy, and he has to prove that this wasn't just a fluke, that he actually full of runner going forward. And then from there, you can see your deal because, like you said, over the first 6 or 7 games, he wasn't the elite top running back in the league level guy, and he really only showed in the second half of the season. Where, well, let's see if he can do that again. So obviously, franchising him, I think, was a good move.
Yeah, that's a good move. I believe that's the only move that we have where it's not a player changing teams, but that was definitely a decision that I liked a lot. Some honorable mentions. We have Eric Ebron, who is going to Pittsburgh. I think that'll work out. I think that a good receiving tight end can really help them, especially with the crazy money that Jimmy Graham got. I think that Eric Ebron going to a very reasonable deal for Pittsburgh. I like that move a lot from their perspective. I think Calais Campbell, you and I were kind of disagreeing on that one, but I like that move. I thought that was a good one. Also, Tampa Bay getting Joe Hag, which I think is going to be really well. He's a versatile offensive lineman. He can play guard or tackle, and I think one very good thing about him is that he was sort of trapped behind that good Colts offensive line, and there oftentimes is a real value in getting a good player who is just blocked because sometimes they're a lot better than you realize. Those are a couple of my honorable mentions. I have a couple more, but do you have any more you want to talk about?
Yeah, there's a few that I ended up really liking. Christian Kirksey, if he can stay healthy in Green Bay. I think Martinez, the question is if he stays healthy. I think he's a talented player. I liked AJ Bouye going to Denver. I think he is an upgrade over Chris Harris, especially this past year's Chris Harris. Obviously, not prime Chris Harris. I think they overpaid for Joe Sherbert at Jacksonville, but I think it's going to be good to have an adult in that room. And I think that's a nice move for Jacksonville. And then the last one for New England, I traded Deron Harmon, who was, kind of a leader of the team, but they brought back Adrian Phillips for essentially nothing, who's another guy when healthy. I think he's a lot better than that third safety role, and I think he's a significant upgrade, and they essentially got him for nothing. So I like that move.
Yeah. I like all those as well. The one other one I wanted to bring up was Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints. I also think that's a very good move. They've been looking for
Yes.
that number 2 receiver behind Michael Thomas for quite some time. I think they finally found it with Sanders. So yeah, I think that's our draft. Those are just touching on some of the moves so far. Seems like most of the moves have been done. Still some balls up in the air, specifically Clowney, but that's what we have so far. So now let's move ahead to kind of a surprising move, although a surprising move that has been happening a bit over recent memory, and that is Travis Frederick, great center for the Cowboys for quite some time, has retired at 29 years old. Yet another star player to retire in their 20s. You know, we saw Andrew Luck retire. I think he was 30. We've seen Luke Kuechly retire this offseason. And now Frederick. What are your initial thoughts to the longtime center no longer being a Dallas Cowboy or a football player in general?
Yeah, it was a pretty surprising move. I think I saw he was 29 and still had $32 million left on his deal.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that's a lot of money to leave on the table. But obviously, with the more we continue to learn about head injuries and the constant hitting that these offensive and defensive linemen takes, I can't blame them for saying, this is what I want to do. In terms of a football perspective, this puts Dallas in a really tough spot. Because obviously that's someone who's going to have to gain a lot of new chemistry with Dak. I do think Zeke is talented enough that he's going to be okay without, having that guy. But obviously this team is prided on having one of the best running backs in football and also having one of the best offensive lines in football. And, you're losing a key piece of that. So I think they're going to have to rework their draft strategy around probably getting a Tyler Beadaz in their second round pick at 51. But, it's crazy to see that this happens, and it's happening more and more. So teams have to prepare for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it just goes to show that, NFL players already have a short playing expectancy. It's going even further down with guys wanting to retire early. I don't know if the Cowboys are screwed. This actually kind of reminds me a lot of the Andrew Luck retirement, and just in the sense that they have a solid backup in Joe Looney. He's played in well when he's had appearances. Also, Connor McGovern, he's played center in college, so that gives them some versatility to work with on the offensive line. So there are a couple of factors there. But like the Andrew Luck thing, there was no replacing Andrew Luck, even though Brissett is a fine, actually a really good backup, a fine player. It's same thing with Frederick. There is no replacing a guy like that. So, and in terms of, to flip it over a little bit, in terms of just him as a person, $39 million, granted, that's probably closer to 20 million after taxes and agent fees and everything like that. But that's still plenty of money that if you know how to invest it properly, you know how to use it, you could be set for life. I don't know if I would have done it with the $9 million getting scheduled for 1 year. It seems like it'd be very tempting to just say, I'll play one more. But sometimes these guys just say, you know what, I don't think I can do it for another year, even though I'm younger than most guys can do it. I just don't have it in me. And quite frankly, I mean, he's pretty much accomplished everything you can do at the center position. He's established himself as a great center. It's not like he's going to now catch a game-winning touchdown. He's not going to set the game-winning block in a Super Bowl. He's pretty much done what he can do. He's left an impact. He made some money. Get out now and enjoy your retirement. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that is going to be interesting going forward when it comes to these retirements, these early retirements that we're seeing over and over again, whether it's the offensive or defensive line. We've seen it already with running backs in their short-term lifespan. Are these contracts going to begin to be adjusted for these offensive linemen based on the ability that these guys may not want to play anymore after 30 years old because of the amount of hits they take? So are these guys going to see less and less long-term contracts, long-term money if more and more guys are continuing to retire early because they're scared? They don't want the head injuries. Rightfully so, they don't want the long-term effects of constant head injuries. But is that going to affect their contracts going forward? It's going to be the interesting thing for me. I do think the Cowboys, I still don't think this team's a Super Bowl contender. I don't think they're, a great team by any means. But I think they are going to be fine in the running department. I think Zeke's still going to get his yards, and they're going to be fine in that regard.
Yeah, if any team could afford to lose a star offensive lineman, it probably is Dallas. I think it'll make them worse. I don't know if it'll be a huge disastrous impact. I do think that I think the Dallas is just one of those weird teams where they're kind of caught in mediocrity. They're not bad enough to tank. They're not good enough to get better. But who knows? Maybe the new coaching change will help things out. But sticking with Travis Frederick, my thing is, when Andrew Luck did this, people were saying, now we're going to see a ton of guys do this. This is, open the floodgates. And I was kind of like, I don't know about that. I mean, people are still people. They're still going to make the same decisions. But now this offseason, we've seen multiple players, Kuechly and Frederick, retire. Is this going to start being a thing? Are we going to see more guys retire in their 20s? Do you think that this is now going to be it's going to come to a point where when somebody's 29, we're going to start to wonder, oh, well, he might retire any day now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say. We're starting to see it more, especially these players that play in the middle of the field that are constantly taking hits. It's going to come to a point where a lot of these guys, football might be football is already turning into a young man's sport. A lot of teams are building their teams around players on rookie contracts anyway. Is it worth playing post 30 years old if you're not respected as one of the best guys in the league? Or if you're not getting paid as one of the best guys in the league anymore and your job's in jeopardy to constantly take these hits? Or is it best to just bow out after you have your rookie contract, you get your first big payday, you play a couple of years, you're out by 30, and then you go into something else? That could be the direction football's going in at this point with the constant head injuries. Because, at the end of the day, there's not going to be a solution to head concussions.
Mm-hmm.
And they can improve the technology of the helmets. They can improve the officiating so that there's less and less targeting. There's less and less this or that. But at the end of the day, there's not going to be a definitive solution that's going to prevent concussions, that's going to prevent head injuries and long-term effects to head injuries to football players. So I don't blame them for wanting to do it. It's just, what's going to be the long-term effects of these players in their contracts post 30 years old from now on?
Right. And I mean, especially with, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't fully understand how these things work. But from my understanding, especially for a center, it's even less so about the concussions and more so about just the repeated hits to the head of almost every play. You're having some sort of head contact. The life expectancy of an offensive lineman is not that high, and there's a reason for it. I think that we can try to make this game as safe as we possibly can. We are never going to be able to make this a perfectly safe football game, and it is the dark reality of the sport that we both and everyone listening loves so much, is that it's a violent sport. And I think good for him for getting out when he feels like he still has his health. He has had some bad injuries, but hopefully this is the kind of thing that will not be the end of the world for him.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, wish him the best of health, obviously. And, it's a shame to see because he's a great football player. But it's also if it's the best decision for him, it's the best decision. So you can't fault him for it.
Exactly. And it also comes down to, we don't know that much. We don't know, is he actually is this just, he wants to party and drink? Maybe. I mean, I don't know who he is. It's hard to really tell. But at the end of the day, as much as we would like for him to still be in the NFL is more fun when talented players are in it. Everyone has to make the right decision for them. And at least, I'm sure Colts fans were kind of saying, I wish, our star player retired before the draft when we still had moments to prepare for it. At least Dallas has that where they can now draft. So definitely a good thing for them. But let's move on to another sort of dark story, I guess, about a young player who had some injuries. Although this one, he definitely got paid. This is Todd Gurley. I mean, the story of Todd Gurley, such a crazy one. He's only 25 years old. I mean, it's amazing how young he is. He was a rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. Although, let's be real, Jameis deserved it. But he won offensive rookie of the year. He was an MVP candidate at one point. And he got this huge contract. And now he got cut. I mean, what a wild turn of events for someone who we thought could be a Hall of Famer in the making.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I think actually he's even an upgrade to Devontae Freeman now in Atlanta. But at the end of the day, it's going to be, you're still paying $6 million. You're the best case scenario for Atlanta. It's a 1-year deal, but you're still paying $6 million to a guy who right now you can't give a physical to because of the whole coronavirus outbreak and all that. You're offering him $6 million without actually looking at this knee that everyone's afraid of. Which I'm curious exactly what's wrong with this knee. It's pretty interesting to, everyone's spooked by Todd Gurley's knee, but I haven't actually heard a definitive things of what's wrong with his leg or his knee or anything like that. It's just crazy to see how he went from one of the highest rated Pro Football Focus running backs of the year to their offensive line getting decimated and he completely fell off. And now he's looking like, he's trying to find a new team and he ended up finding it with the Falcons. But, it's completely change of history for what Gurley was.
Yeah, and you got to think about, if talking about affecting contracts, I don't think any running back is going to get paid early ever again after this disaster of one. I do think from also you said what I've heard, I think this is just speculation. This isn't confirmed. Is people talk about arthritis, but that has never been confirmed, so it's hard to really know what exactly it is with the knee injury. I thought that he at times last year looked abysmal, like not even backup level quality. There were a couple of moments though where I was like, okay, this is a solid running back. This isn't a star. This isn't Todd Gurley. He was never the Todd Gurley that he was the year before, but he had some moments. And I do think that for Atlanta, they're hoping that with a $6 million contract, they can go out and buy a solid running back with the potential to still be an MVP candidate. I don't love the move. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, I talked about the Robbie Anderson this signing in my video I made yesterday. And the reason why I like that move is because I think he has great potential, but you're paying for what you're getting regardless. So it's like you pay for a solid player, you get a solid player who has potential to be great. I think that's what they're trying to do with Gurley, but I just think that there is a lot more risk there with him than with some other guys.
Yeah, the question is does he ever get great again? And, the contract thing, I didn't like the contract as soon as it happened. You didn't have to pay him early. There was no reason to pay him early. You just run with the contract that he has and then see what happens when it's time for him to get re-signed. And it's just paying running backs is really hard nowadays. And it still seems like every day teams are trying to figure it out. Like Melvin Gordon was abysmal for some of the year last year and still got $13.5 million guaranteed. Like, who's negotiating $13.5 million to guarantee Melvin Gordon after some of the struggles he had last season after coming back from that long holdout? It's interesting to see that, it seems like some teams just still haven't figured out the running back position and what the value is of these players.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's any position like this in sports where it is valuable. You need a good running back, but also you can afford to. They're kind of easy to get. It's like if you don't have a running game, you're not going to be successful. But also, it's not that difficult to get a running back, except for some teams that just seem to really struggle with it. Atlanta has been one of those teams since Freeman has fallen off. So maybe they're just hoping that Gurley can work. They're just taking a chance. I don't love it. I do think that Gurley was at least, he had a sense of humor about it. Him tweeting out, "Damn, I got fired on my day off," I thought was funny. There was also this. So you said they can't physical him, and that's true. He did get a physical, but they had to, find a doctor in his area that they agreed upon for the physical to work. And there was a very funny moment where. Oh, okay. I was gonna say, there's a very funny moment. You're good. There was a very amusing moment where if he failed a physical, then he would have gotten $10 million. They would have had to pay him an extra $10 million contract for the signing bonus, or if not for the signing bonus, but for the bonus he was going to get. So there was this weird moment where if he failed a physical, the Rams would be stuck with him, and he would have to be getting $10 million extra dollars, which was interesting. Also, the Falcons' Twitter was way too excited about this. I thought they tweeted out, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got him." Like he's not prime Todd Gurley. Like you didn't just get Patrick Mahomes. Like, ladies and gentlemen, we got a running back who is almost universally agreed to be banged up and not worth anything anymore. Congratulations to us.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like it's really hard to rate Todd Gurley nowadays because it's like if he comes back, like if I'm getting 75 or 80% of Todd Gurley, I still really like him in that offense and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield with Ryan and the receivers they have. He's going to make a difference in the passing game and the running game. But the question is, can you even guarantee you're getting 75% of Todd Gurley? At this point, I'm more likely to get 40% of Todd Gurley, it seems like. And that's just not a very good running back.
Yeah, I again couldn't agree more. I just maybe Atlanta is just saying we suck, and so we're just going to try some things and see what works. Because to me, this move seems like a perfect Cincinnati Bengals, or I guess they have Joe Mixon. They probably don't want to take away carries, but like a Detroit Lions. Let's go out and get Todd Gurley, and then if he blows, whatever. But I do think Atlanta is trying to be good. I think Atlanta doesn't know what they are. Honestly, I don't think I know what Atlanta is. They're the kind of team that can beat anybody and can lose to anybody. But one thing, maybe this is just Todd Gurley played for Georgia. Like maybe they're just like a money making opportunity of listen, we're going to sell a lot of Falcons Gurley jerseys, way more than we would any other player we pay $6 million. Maybe this is just a move to get some money that way. I mean, maybe this is could it be possible at all that there is a bit of a business side to this move?
Oh, there's no doubt a business side. I'm living in Georgia right now, and they're all excited about Todd Gurley coming home. So I understand the business side of this. I kind of liked what Falcons had done before this. I didn't think they should have. Austin Hooper's a good tight end, but he was kind of overpaid. They upgraded Vic Beasley with DeForest Buckner, and then
wait, not DeForest Buckner. They got
Dante Fowler, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Dante Fowler, that's the one. My bad.
There we go.
But yeah,
it's okay.
So it's still an upgrade over Vic Beasley, who was atrocious on that team, and you're getting. We'll see what happens. I still think this offense is going to be really good, but the best part about all this is they're letting Freeman go. And they let Tevin Coleman go, who I thought was actually really good and would have been a really valuable running back to actually be their starter. And throughout all this, they're paying Todd Gurley $6 million for a year.
Yeah. And first off, never feel bad about saying someone's name wrong or saying the wrong name, because if I lost a subscriber for every time I did that, I'd be in the negatives. So that is totally something very understandable. But yeah, again. It's just it's kind of just like it's weird because you want to call it a sad story, right? Because you want to say this guy was going to be on top of the world, fell apart, but then there is that also part of like, well, he is getting millions of dollars to play a sport, so
yeah, he's gonna do okay.
Yeah, in terms of sad stories, this is one that you could still tell your kids. I think this is not the worst story in the world whatsoever. Any more thoughts on Todd Gurley?
No, I think that just about covered it. We'll see what happens. I think the Atlanta offense is going to be fine. My worry with the Falcons isn't the offense, it's Dan Quinn and the rest of that team. So I think they're still going to be fine, whether Gurley is a major contributor or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, quite frankly, I do really like Matt Ryan. I think he's still a very good quarterback. I think that, you put him on it, even with the poor offensive line, which, listen, they cannot seemingly pump in more resources to improve their line. Maybe they'll do that again this draft. But it so far just hasn't really worked out too well. And it kind of just goes to show that their talent evaluation hasn't been perfectly sound. But maybe the offensive line, as they get older, will get better. Gurley will have something to block in front of him because the line wasn't great for the Rams last year. There were some runs where he just had no chance. And maybe if the line can block better, he could have a better appearance, with the Falcons than he did with the Rams. It's a risk, but at the end of the day, this move is not going to tank the Atlanta Falcons, and it could end up being a great move. So I guess there is that.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yep. All right, so I guess we'll wrap things up. Everyone, make sure to check out all my videos on Jackson Cougar Sports. Kyle, do you have any plugs? Anything you want to plug?
No, I think I'm good on plugs. I mean, if you want to check out Saturday Blitz on Fansided, I write some college football on there, or Bo Sox Injection on Fansided, I write some Red Sox baseball. If you're interested in reading some of my other bad takes, go ahead and check them out.
All right. Thanks again for coming on, and everyone, thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week because we're going to try to do this every Thursday. So see you then.
Peace.